The claw stopped 1 inch from the soft human throat. Kirith held it there, not as a threat, but as a question. Her scales shifted from green to curious blue as she studied the creature sitting across from her. The human woman did not move. She did not even blink. "You have no armor," Kirith said slowly. "No venom. No clothes. Your teeth are flat and weak. Your skin tears like wet paper." The other aliens in the cultural exchange room watched in silence. A small Namori diplomat named Pell pressed himself against the far wall, his large eyes filled with terror. The Velthri warrior had finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. Doctor Anita Reyes smiled. This confused Kirith more than anything else. Prey animals did not smile when a predator put a claw to their throat. They screamed. They begged. They tried to run. "You want to know how we survived?" Anita said calmly. "Yes." Kirith pulled her claw back slowly. "My people have studied your world. Earth is a death planet. Extreme temperatures, constant disasters, predators everywhere. Your species should have died 1,000,000 years ago. But you did not die. You conquered your world. Then you reached for the stars." Her scales flushed orange with frustration. "How? You are soft. You are slow. You have nothing." Anita leaned forward slightly. "Would you like to know why claws would have made us weaker?" The room went completely silent. Ambassador Pell made a small squeaking sound. The Namori were a fragile species from a low-gravity world. They had no natural weapons either, but they had never left their home system until other species came to them. The idea that claws could be a weakness was impossible to understand. Kirith's scales shifted through several colors before settling on deep purple, the shade of genuine interest. "Explain." Anita held up her hands. They were strange hands by galactic standards. 5 fingers on each, with soft pink skin and short, flat nails. "No clothes. No poison. No jardin bonerillis." "These hands," Anita said, "are the most dangerous weapons in the galaxy." Kirith laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "Those? I could cut through them with a single swipe." "Yes, you could." Anita turned her hands over, showing the palms. "But these hands built the ship that brought me here. These hands created medicines that cure diseases your people still die from. These hands designed weapons that could crack your home world in half." The laughter stopped. "Your claws are fixed," Anita continued. "They do one thing. They cut. They're the same claws your ancestors had 1,000,000 years ago. But my hands." She wiggled her fingers. "They can hold a rock, throw a spear, build a fire, write poetry, perform surgery, or press a button that launches a missile. Every generation, we build better tools. Every century, we become more dangerous. Your claws stayed the same. Our hands kept evolving their purpose." Kirith stared at the human hands like they were venomous snakes. "My people chose a different path," Anita said softly. "Long ago, before we were even fully human, we made a trade. We gave up natural weapons. In exchange, we gained the ability to create any weapon we could imagine. And human imagination has no limits." "But why?" Kirith demanded. "Why would evolution take such a risk?" "Because we were never meant to fight alone." Anita stood up slowly. Kirith tensed, her claws extending automatically, but the human made no aggressive move. She simply walked to the window that looked out into the endless stars. "A single human is weak," Anita admitted. "Alone, we die. Alone, any predator on our world could have killed us. But humans are never alone. We hunt in packs. We share knowledge. We protect each other." She turned back to face Kirith. "We traded personal weapons for group weapons. We traded individual strength for collective power." Ambassador Pell had crept closer, his fear temporarily replaced by fascination. "But many species work together. The Velthri have armies. The Karathi have hive minds. This is not unique." "No," Anita agreed. "But humans do something no other species does. We adopt strangers into our pack. We form bonds with creatures that are not our blood. We protect beings that give us nothing in return." She looked directly at Kirith. "Given enough time, we will try to make you family." Kirith's scales went completely white, the Velthri color of shock. "That is why we have no claws," Anita said. We do not need them. We have each other. And that makes us more dangerous than any predator with fangs and venom and armored hide. The communication device on Kirith's wrist beeped. A message from High Commander Strahl, demanding her report on human weaknesses. Kirith looked at the human woman with new eyes. This soft, slow, clawless creature had just described a species that traded the weapons of a lone hunter for the weapons of an army. A species that could turn enemies into family. A species that never stopped creating new ways to kill. And she had smiled while a claw rested against her throat. I need to learn more, Kirith said. Finally did Anita's smile widened. I was hoping you would say that. She extended one of those strange, dangerous hands toward the Velthari warrior. It was an offer, an invitation. Kirith did not know what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain. She had badly underestimated humans, and she suspected the entire galaxy had made the same mistake. The stone was older than civilization. Kirith held it carefully in her clawed hands, turning it over to examine the rough edges. It was a simple thing, gray, cold, shaped by hands that had been dust for 100,000 years. This is a weapon? She asked. Anita nodded. One the first. A hand axe. Our ancestors made these before they could speak, before they could write, before they were even fully human. They stood in the human cultural wing of the station. Kirith had never visited this section before. Most aliens considered it a waste of space. Humans were new to the galactic community. What could they possibly have worth displaying? Now Kirith was not so sure. The room was filled with objects behind glass. Stones with sharp edges. Wooden sticks with pointed tips. Strange curved objects made of animal parts. Metal tubes and blades, and things she could not identify. Many species make tools, Kirith said. The Namori build machines. The Grothri shape metal. This is not special. Anita took the hand axe back gently. The Namori started building machines 2,000 years ago, after they developed language and mathematics. The Grothri learned metalwork 3,000 years ago, during their industrial age. She held up the stone. Humans were making these 2 million years ago. Kirith's scales flickered. That is impossible. It is the truth. Our ancestors made tools before they were smart enough to be called people. Tool use did not come from intelligence. Intelligence came from tool use. She placed the hand axe back in its case and led Kirith deeper into the museum. They passed displays of spears and bows and strange metal weapons that Kirith had never seen before. Your claws are part of your body, Anita explained. To improve them, you would need to change your DNA. That takes millions of years. But human weapons? She gestured at the displays. We went from rocks to nuclear bombs in the blink of an evolutionary eye. 10,000 generations. Nothing in galactic terms. They stopped in front of a case containing a primitive firearm. It was crude and ugly, made of wood and metal. This weapon is 500 years old, Anita said. It could throw a small piece of metal fast enough to pierce Velthari's scales. Kirith touched her own armored chest instinctively. This one is 200 years old. Anita pointed to a sleeker weapon in the next case. It could fire 20 pieces of metal before needing to reload. They walked further. This is 50 years old. It fires energy beams that can cut through starship hulls. Further still, this is from last year. It creates a targeted gravity well that crushes anything inside it. Kirith stopped walking. Her scales had gone pale gray, the color of deep unease. You see the pattern, Anita said. It was not a question. Your weapons improve faster than any species can adapt. Yes, by the time an enemy develops armor against one weapon, we have invented 10 new ones. By the time they learn our tactics, we have created entirely new ways of war. Anita's voice was soft, almost sad. This is what we traded our claws for. Not just the ability to make tools, the ability to make better tools. Forever, without limit. A small voice came from behind them. But you use these hands for more than killing. Ambassador Pell had followed them. The little Namori stood between two display cases, his large eyes fixed on a painting that hung on the wall. It showed a sunset over an ocean, orange and gold and beautiful. You made this too, Pell said quietly. With the same hands that made the weapons. Anita walked over to stand beside him. Yes, the same hands that shaped killing tools also shaped art. Music, medicine, architecture. She knelt down to meet Pell's eyes. We could have used our gifts only for destruction, but we chose to also create beauty. Why? Kirith demanded. If you can make such powerful weapons, why waste time on paintings and songs? Anita stood and faced her. Because those things remind us why we fight. We do not make weapons because we love war. We make weapons because we love what we protect. Our families, our friends, our art and music and stories. She smiled gently. The weapons are just tools. What matters is what we use them for. Kirith looked around the museum with new understanding. She had thought it was a display of human weakness, primitive tools, and simple art. Now she realized it was a warning. This species had gone from banging rocks together to bending gravity in 2 million years. They had invented new ways to kill faster than any species in recorded history. And they had done it with nothing but soft hands and clever minds. You gave up claws for these, Kirith said slowly, staring at Anita's fingers. And with these you built weapons that could kill gods. Anita did not deny it. The Velthari have ruled our sector for 10,000 years, Kirith continued. Our claws have not changed in that time. Not once. No, Anita agreed. They have not. Kirith looked at her own hands. Strong, sharp, deadly. And for the first time in her life, they felt inadequate. What else can your hands do? She asked. Anita smiled and gestured toward the exit. Come with me. I will show you something even more frightening than our weapons. Kirith followed, her scales shifting through colors she could not name. She had come to study human weakness. Instead, she was beginning to fear human strength. The human threw food at another human's head. Kirith watched in confusion as the second human caught the thrown object and laughed. Then he threw something back. More laughter. Neither of them seemed angry. What were they doing? Kirith asked. Anita smiled from her seat beside the Velthari warrior. Playing. They are adults. Yes, adults do not play. Play is for children learning to fight. Human adults play their entire lives. It strengthens social bonds. Kirith's scales shifted to confused purple as she watched the human recreation area. It was chaos. Humans sat in groups, talking and laughing. Some played games with cards or small pieces on boards. Others threw balls back and forth. Several were gathered around a screen, shouting at images of other humans running on a green field. But the strangest thing was the touching. Humans touched each other constantly. They slapped each other's backs. They gripped hands. They wrapped arms around shoulders. Two humans near the window were pressed together, their mouths touching in a display that would be considered deeply intimate among the Velthari. This disturbs you, Anita observed. Among my people, touch is reserved for mates and rivals, Kirith admitted. Close contact with non-family members is a challenge or an invitation. But your kind touches everyone. We are a social species. Physical contact releases chemicals in our brains that create feelings of trust and happiness. It helps us bond. Bond with strangers. Yes. Anita pointed to a group of humans from different ships. Their uniforms were different colors. Their skin tones ranged from pale to dark. They spoke with different accents. But they sat together like old friends, sharing food and jokes. Those humans met 3 days ago, Anita said. Now look at them. Kirith looked. The humans moved together like a unit. When one laughed, others joined. When one needed something, others provided it without being asked. It was as if they could read each other's minds. Impossible, Kihat whispered. They are not related. They are not from the same tribe or nation. How can they trust each other so quickly? Because humans are programmed to form packs, Anita explained. Long ago, our survival depended on cooperation. Lone humans died. Groups survived. So we evolved to bond fast and bond deep with anyone who might help us survive. But these are not survival conditions. This is a comfortable space station. The instinct remains. We cannot turn it off. Put any group of humans together, and within days they will start functioning as a family. A tall human with dark skin walked over to them. This was Captain Diego Ortiz, the commander of the human forces on the station. Kirith had seen him in official meetings, always calm, always watchful. Dr. Reyes. Kirith. He nodded to each of them. Mind if I join you? Kirith tensed. Among the Velthari, when a military commander approached, subordinates showed submission. But Anita simply smiled and gestured to an empty seat. Please. Ortiz sat down and immediately offered Kirith a small wrap package. Chocolate. Human food. You might like it. Kirith stared at him. Why are you giving me food? Because you were sitting with my friend. Any friend of Anita is welcome at my table. He said it simply, as if it was obvious. We're not friends, Kirith said carefully. We are members of different species from different worlds. We met 4 days ago. Ortiz shrugged. 4 days is enough. You are curious about us instead of afraid. You ask questions instead of making threats. That makes you someone worth knowing. He pushed the chocolate closer. Try it. If you hate it, I will eat it myself. Kirith's scales shifted through several colors. This human was treating her like pack, like family. They had spoken perhaps 50 words before this moment, and he was already offering her gifts and calling her welcome. It was insane. It was terrifying. Her communicator beeped. A message from High Commander Schral, demanding an update on human military capabilities. Kirith looked at the humans around her. Laughing, playing, touching, bonding. They looked so soft, so harmless, but she was beginning to understand the truth. You do this on purpose, she said slowly. The bonding, the gifts, the inclusion. It is a strategy. It is not a strategy, Anita said quietly. It is who we are, but it has strategic effects. Enemies become allies. Strangers become friends. And friends become people we would die to protect. And kill to protect. Ortiz added, his voice suddenly harder. Anyone who threatens my people threatens my family. I have a lot of family. Kirith looked around the recreation area again. 100 humans, all treating each other like beloved relatives. If each of them felt the same loyalty Ortiz described, then attacking one human meant facing the wrath of all of them. The Velthri word for this behavior was weakness. But watching the humans move together like a single organism with many bodies, Kirith began to suspect her people had mistranslated something vital. This was not weakness. This was a weapon more dangerous than claws or fangs or venom. This was a species that turned strangers into soldiers who would die for each other. And looking at the chocolate in her hand, Kirith realized something terrifying. They were already trying to recruit her. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Kirith had been counting. The human had not stopped running for 2 hours and 17 minutes. She stood at the observation window of the station gymnasium, her scales cycling through shades of disbelief. The human male on the track below was drenched in water. It poured from his skin in rivers, soaking his thin clothing. His face was red. His breathing was heavy, but he did not stop. This is impossible, Kirith said. No creature can maintain this pace for so long. Anita stood beside her, watching the runner with something like pride. His name is Private Santos. He is training for a marathon. What is a marathon? A race. 42 kilometers without stopping. Kirith's claws scraped against the window. 42 kilometers? Running? Why would anyone do such a thing? Because humans evolved as persistence hunters. Anita's voice took on the tone of a teacher. Long ago, before we had weapons, we hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We cannot run as fast as most animals, but we can run longer than almost anything alive. That liquid pouring from his body, sweat, it cools our skin. Most predators must stop and pant to cool down. Humans can regulate temperature while moving. We just keep running and running until our prey falls down and cannot get up. Kirith imagined being hunted by something that never stopped, never tired, just kept coming hour after hour until you collapsed and died. Her scales went pale that a sudden alarm cut through the gymnasium. Red lights flashed. A voice announced an emergency in the cargo bay. Santos stopped running immediately. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the exit. He had been running for over 2 hours, but he moved as if he had just started. Come, Anita said. You should see this. They arrived at the cargo bay to find chaos. A loading crane had malfunctioned and collapsed. Debris covered the floor, and somewhere under the wreckage, someone was screaming. Kira saw Ambassador Pell pressed against a wall, trembling. Several Namori workers stood nearby, frozen with fear. Their species was fragile. They could not dig through heavy metal. They could only watch, but the humans were already moving. Captain Ortiz stood at the center of the disaster, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. He was shouting orders, directing his people, pointing at sections of the wreckage. "Lift here. Brace that beam. Santos, get under there and find the survivor." Santos, the man who had been running for 2 hours, dropped to his belly and crawled into a gap in the debris. He disappeared into darkness without hesitation. "He will be crushed," Kirith said. "Maybe." Ortiz appeared beside them, still bleeding. "But someone is alive under there. We do not leave our people behind. You're injured. You should seek medical attention." Ortiz touched his forehead and looked at the blood on his fingers. This is nothing. I have had worse. It is clearly painful. Pain is just information." He turned back to the rescue. Humans are good at ignoring information we do not like. 10 minutes later, Santos emerged from the wreckage dragging a Namori worker. The small alien was unconscious but alive. Santos himself was covered in cuts and bruises. He was gasping for air, but he was smiling. The Namori workers rushed forward to help their colleague. Ambassador Pell watched with enormous eyes as humans carried the injured to the medical bay. Every human was bleeding or limping or showing some sign of damage. None of them stopped working. "Your people are insane," Kirith said quietly. "Yes," Anita agreed. "We are. Our brains can override our bodies in ways that should not be possible. When we decide something is important, we ignore pain, ignore exhaustion, ignore every signal telling us to stop. We just keep going until you die." Sometimes, humans have run themselves to death chasing goals, climbed mountains until their bodies froze, fought battles until their hearts gave out. Anita's voice was soft but firm. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest, but we may be the most stubborn creatures in the universe." Ortiz walked past them toward the medical bay. His leg was clearly injured. Kirith could see him limping, but he refused assistance. Someone tried to make him sit down. He waved them away and kept moving, checking on his people, making sure everyone was safe. He will not rest, Kirith realized. Not until the job is done. Not until everyone is accounted for. That is human nature. Kirith watched the humans work, bleeding but functioning, exhausted but moving, broken but undefeated. "Your kind does not stop," she said, and for the first time, her voice carried something other than curiosity. It carried fear. Anita heard it. She understood. "No," she said quietly. "We do not stop. Not when we are running. Not when we are fighting. Not when someone we care about needs help." She looked at Kirith with calm, steady eyes. "You asked how humans survived without claws. This is how. We survived because we refused to quit. We refused to die. We just kept moving forward, one step at a time, until we conquered everything in our path." Kirith thought about the Velthri way of war. Swift attacks, overwhelming force, quick victories. What happened when you faced an enemy who did not know how to surrender? What happened when you fought something that simply refused to fall? She was beginning to understand why the galaxy should fear humans, and it had nothing to do with claws. The explosion threw Kirith against the wall. Her warrior instincts took over before she could think. Claws extended. Scales hardened. I searched for enemies. But the corridor was filled with smoke and screaming, and she could see nothing clearly. Another explosion. Closer this time. The station shook. "We are under attack," someone shouted. Kirith pushed herself up and ran toward the sound of battle. This was what she understood. This was what Velthri were made for. Find the enemy. Kill the enemy. Simple. She rounded a corner and found chaos. The diplomatic wing had been torn apart. Walls were broken. Bodies lay on the ground. Some moving, some still. Aliens of a dozen species ran in every direction, screaming, panicking, dying, and in the middle of it all, humans. But they were not doing what Kirith expected. Captain Ortiz stood at a junction, directing traffic like a conductor leading music. Namori to the left. Medical bay is secure. Velthari, help me hold this position. Everyone else, keep moving. He was not hunting enemies. He was saving people. Kirith watched in confusion as humans spread throughout the disaster zone. Some carried weapons and moved toward the sounds of fighting. But most were picking up the wounded, guiding the lost, shielding the weak with their own bodies that a human woman sprinted past carrying a Namori child. The child was not her species, not her family, not her concern, but she held it against her chest like the most precious thing in the universe. Why? Kirith demanded, grabbing Anita as the doctor ran past. Why are you wasting resources on strangers? The enemy is that way. Fight them. Some of us are fighting, Anita said calmly. The rest of us are protecting. That is how humans work. We divide tasks based on ability. But these people are not your pack. Anita looked at her with something like sadness. Yes, they are. Everyone on this station is my pack. I chose them the moment I decided to protect them. She pulled free and ran toward a collapsed section where someone was calling for help. Kirith stood frozen, watching humans rush into danger to save aliens who had shown them no loyalty, offered them no alliance, given them nothing at all. That IT made no tactical sense, that IT made no evolutionary sense. And yet the humans did it anyway. That a new figure appeared in the smoke. High Commander Strahl, leader of the Velthari forces, his scales bright red with battle rage. Kirith, we have located the attackers. They are retreating to the cargo bay. Kulme, we will slaughter them. Kirith hesitated. Her instinct screamed at her to follow, to hunt, to kill. That was the Velthari way. But her eyes kept finding the humans, still carrying wounded, still protecting strangers, still treating every life as something worth saving. Go, she told Strahl. I will join you shortly. Strahl's scales flickered with disapproval, but he left without argument. There were enemies to kill. Kirith made her way through the wreckage, helping where she could, until she found Anita again. The doctor was kneeling beside a figure on the ground, an attacker. One of the raiders, wounded and bleeding, his weapon lying useless beside him, and Anita was treating his injuries. What are you doing? Kirith demanded. He is the enemy. He is a patient. Anita did not look up. He is also a person. He made bad choices. That does not mean he deserves to die in pain. He tried to kill your people. Yes. And when he is stable, he will face justice for that. But I am a doctor. I do not decide who lives and who dies based on what they have done. I save everyone I can. The raider looked up at Anita with wide, confused eyes. He had clearly expected death. He had expected the hatred he had earned. Instead, he received gentle hands and soft words. Why? He whispered. Anita smiled. It was the same smile she had given Kirith when a claw rested at her throat. Calm, warm, unafraid. Because this is what humans do. We fight when we must, but we heal when we can. Destroying is easy. Anyone with claws can destroy. Building? Saving? Forgiving? That requires something more. The raider started to cry. High Commander Strahl would call this weakness. He would say that mercy was stupidity, that enemies must be crushed completely, that kindness was a flaw in the human design. But Kirith watched the raider, a killer, a monster, weeping as a human woman bandaged his wounds, and she understood something Strahl never would. This was not weakness. This was strength beyond anything claws could achieve. Humans could kill. They had proven that throughout their history. They could be brutal and violent and terrifying when pushed, but they could also choose not to kill. They could look at an enemy and see a person. They could offer healing instead of hatred. That choice, the ability to destroy and the wisdom to sometimes refuse, was what made humans truly dangerous, because a species that could only kill was predictable, but a species that could kill or forgive, fight or heal, destroy or create, that species was impossible to understand and impossible to defeat. Kirith retracted her claws and knelt beside Anita. Show me how to help, she said. The doctor smiled and handed her a bandage. For the first time in her life, Kirith used her deadly hands to heal instead of harm. IT felt strange. IT felt right. IT felt human. 1 month after the attack, Kirith returned to where everything began, The observation deck had been repaired. New glass. Fresh paint. No sign of the battle that had torn through the station. But Kirith remembered every moment. Every explosion. Every act of unexpected mercy. She found Anita standing at the window, watching the stars. "You wanted to see me?" the doctor asked without turning around. "Yes." Kirith's scales shifted through nervous colors before settling on formal gray. "I need to tell you something." Anita turned to face her. "I am listening." Kirith took a deep breath. "High Commander Strahl ordered me to report on human weaknesses. He wanted to know how to defeat your species, where to strike, how to break you." Anita's expression did not change. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him that humans were not a threat, that your lack of natural weapons made you inferior, that the Velthari had nothing to fear." Silence stretched between them. "I lied," Kirith said quietly. Anita's eyebrows rose slightly. "You lied to your High Commander?" "Yes. I violated my oath. I betrayed my people's trust." Kirith's claws flexed nervously. "Do you know why?" "Tell me." "Because if I had told him the truth, he would have started a war, and the Velthari would lose." She moved closer to the window, standing beside the human. "I understand you now," Kirith continued. "I understand why you have no claws. You traded them for something far more dangerous. What do you think that is?" Kirith looked at her own reflection in the glass. "A warrior, a predator, a creature built for killing." Then she looked at Anita's reflection. Soft skin, flat teeth, small nails, nothing threatening at all. And yet Kirith knew which of them was more dangerous. "Connection," she said finally. "You gave up the weapons of lonely hunters for the weapons of a species that fights as one. Your hands cannot kill, but they can build machines that destroy worlds. They can create medicines that cure death. They can reach out and turn enemies into friends." She turned to face Anita directly. "Your claws are each other. Every human is a weapon. Every bond is a blade. You do not need fangs because you have a billion fists ready to fight for you." Anita's eyes glistened with emotion. "That is a beautiful way to put it. It is also terrifying." Kirith's scales flickered red for a moment. "The Velthari way is simple. Strong survive. Vikti. Competition makes us better. But your way? You take weakness and make it strength. You take strangers and make them family. You take enemies and make them allies." "Not always," Anita admitted. "We fail sometimes. We fight among ourselves. We make terrible mistakes. But you keep trying. You never give up on each other, even when it would be easier to walk away." Anita nodded slowly. "That is who we are, for better or worse." Kirith reached for something at her belt. Anita tensed slightly, but relaxed when she saw what it was: a small piece of chocolate. The same kind Captain Ortiz had given her weeks ago. "I have been thinking about this," Kirith said, holding up the candy. "You gave me food, a gift, an invitation to join your pack. I did not understand then. And now I understand that it was the most dangerous thing you could have done." She unwrapped the chocolate slowly. "Because I cannot stop thinking about it. About you. About your strange, soft, stubborn species." She ate the chocolate. It was sweet. Too sweet for Velthari taste, but she was beginning to like it. "I want to learn more," Kirith said. "I want to understand how humans think, how you build bonds, how you turn weakness into power." Anita extended her hand, the same gesture she had made on that first day. "Then stay. Work with us. Help us build bridges between our peoples." Kirith looked at the hand. Soft, harmless, fragile, and incredibly dangerous. Slowly, she retracted her claws. Then she reached out and took the human hand in her own. The grip was warm, gentle, strong in a way that had nothing to do with muscle or bone. "I think," Kirith said quietly, "that this is the beginning of something the galaxy has never seen." Anita smiled. "I hope so." The door to the observation deck opened. Ambassador Pell entered, his large eyes bright with excitement. "Dr. Reyes." "Kirith, I have news." The little Namori bounced on his feet. "The Namori Council has voted. We want a formal alliance with humanity. We want to join your pack." Anita laughed, a warm, happy sound. "That is wonderful news, Ambassador. There is more. The Grothri are asking questions about human cooperation. The Selani want to study your social bonding. Even some of the Velthari outer colonies are expressing interest in dialogue. Kirith felt her scales shift to surprised gold. The outer colonies? They have never spoken to non-Velthari before. They are curious, Pel said. Everyone is curious. The humans came to the galaxy without claws or fangs or armor, and somehow they're drawing everyone closer together. Kirith looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, species were watching, learning, wondering how a soft, slow, fragile species had become the center of galactic attention. And she finally knew the answer. Why no claws? She had asked that first day. Now she understood. Humans had no claws because they had something better. They had hands that could build instead of destroy. They had hearts that could love instead of hate. They had each other, and that made them the most powerful species in the universe.